Hey everybody, it's Jo Parr, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group. Are you feeling stuck with your gun dog training? Trust me, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to be here. Every week, we're bringing you the best tips and hacks to make training your gun dog easy peasy. We'll keep it straightforward, no fuss, just actionable guidance that you can put straight to use. So let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Found It Fetched It. In this episode, we're going to be talking all about finding common sense in dog training advice. Joining me for this episode is LWDG Group Expert Gemma Martin and LWDG Group Expert Samantha Thorney Croft Taylor. How are you both after the Christmas break, ladies?
Yeah, slowly getting back into the groove. I wasn't very well over Christmas, so it's actually been quite nice to feel better and get back to work.
I'm really good, thanks, Jo. Looking forward to talking about this with you, and I'm glad you're feeling better, Jem.
So let's all talk about common sense in relation to, let's start at the point of social media is we've talked about it before, the wild west of dog training advice. There's so many training tips, techniques, opinions, and for a lot of people, especially if you're at the beginning of training your dog, it is incredibly overwhelming. So let's start with why we think there are so many different varying opinions on it. As dog trainers, what do you think?
I think, to be honest, I think everybody has an opinion and everybody has a right to an opinion. But I think there are a lot of people out there and a lot of dog trainers out there that always believe their way is the right way and no other way can work. And if you are new to dog training, maybe you got your first dog, or you might be on your second and third, but it's been a while since you had a puppy, it's sort of commonplace these days to go to Google and to ask advice on what you do. And there are some times where you might fall on a piece of advice that you think, okay, that is exactly how I have to do it. And then there's no adaptation to your individual circumstances. You know, we always say every dog is unique, every dog is individual, and we have to train the dog in front of us, which is why it can never be a one size fits all approach.
Yeah, I think exactly that. And exactly what you said, Jo. I think when you look at social media and you Google how to start my puppy training and things like that, it's so overwhelming. There's information left, right and centre, and they all say different things because nobody agrees. And you read some of it and it just seems so overcomplicated for what you're actually trying to achieve. And I think that in turn confuses the owners, which then builds frustration, which then confuses the dog. And you end up with this sort of vicious circle of actually never getting anywhere because you're picking lots of different bits of training that you're finding online that sounds useful. You're making it too complicated and setting yourselves up to fail, really.
For all three of us, where we use the online space to find new customers, to keep in contact with members or clients, we understand a little bit more about what businesses are trying to do, as in we are all fighting for the same attention. And that has turned, I fancy, into almost how clickbaity can I get? How opinionated can I get? How much anger can I cause, or how much involvement from people can I get just to move up the rankings of being found? Do you two find that? Do you find that you're reading a lot of stuff that's intentionally inflammatory just to get likes and comments?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely posts out there that are put up just to fill the comment section with arguments from people. I try with posts mainly to be fairly sort of Switzerland about everything and just to try and be informative, but not too much, because again, the advice we're giving online can't be applied to every single dog. We've got to speak to that owner and we've got to know that individual dog to give that advice, which is why advice online can be so detrimental to owners and their dogs, because it might not apply to them. Sam?
Exactly that. And certainly when we're looking at behavioural modification, what helped with one dog might actually make the other one much, much worse. So, you know, it is important to make sure that you get help that is unique to your situation, as I said before. And with your comments about social media, you know, Jem, your posts are definitely neutral in that respect, you know, educational, informative, but not inflammatory. There is so much out there that you read it and you just think, why did you put that on social media? Although I have to hold my hands up here, my main battle with social media is actually putting stuff on there in the first place.
It is like a really hard fought space for attention, but like the LWDG, we're very much the same as you. We absolutely keep out of the chaos. Very rarely do I put a viewpoint or a standpoint, because we all believe in the same ethos, which is every dog is different, train the dog in front of you. And that could be training from one camp to another camp. But don't you also find that, like, whereas we sort of sit in Switzerland and you guys do the same, and we say, well, yeah, that might work, and that might work. You've got to find what works for the dog. We do have this other side of it where they're like, no, nothing will work other than exactly what I am telling you right now. No one in the world has ever trained a dog well, just me. You must only listen to me.
It is very much that mentality sometimes, and you do see, you know, posts online and reels and everything where that's exactly what people are saying. It's my way or the highway. And as you said, Joe, absolutely no one can possibly know what I know as well as me type thought process. And it just doesn't work. You know, there's always more than one way to skin a cat.
For our members and for our listeners, if they're new to training this dog, and I say this dog because, you know, I was talking to a lady yesterday who had a boxer 3 years ago and had a new boxer, and this boxer is very, very different to the last boxer. So it might not be your first dog, but it's training this dog in front of you. What do we say to them about going through this and finding good information? Because we live on social media. The LWDG has got, you know, obviously got the website for the members, but we do loads and loads of great work on social media. How do people find the content that's supporting rather than the content that's confusing?
I think whenever you're looking at anything, you've got to keep your mind open, but also in the back of your head, you've got to have that common sense approach. So any information you gather or glean from social media, sit down, just think a minute and go, actually, what am I trying to teach my dog by doing this? Does this fully make sense in my head of how the dog is going to learn? And if there's any sort of red flags on anything you've read that go, well, I don't really understand why I'm doing that, then don't doubt yourself. There's probably a good reason why you've gone, I don't really understand why I'm not doing that, or why I'm being told to do that. And then speak to other people about that approach and ask the whys and wherefores of what they're telling you to do, rather than just accepting things blindly. Say, yeah, but why am I doing that? What's that supposed to achieve? And I think those are the questions that we're maybe not asking, and just going on with what people are telling us to do because they're the professionals, X, Y, and Z. Sam?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that's why it's so important as well to try and find someone that is ideally close to you, or at least, you know, that sort of instructs in a way that you can understand, to back you up. They can give you in-person advice, you know, and we all actually do online consultations and things, but I think we all also believe that in person is generally more intricate to seeing, you know, the tiny little nuances and the body language of the dog and the handler. But like you said, Jem, if something in your head is going, why, or that doesn't make sense, that's where you need to absolutely adopt common sense and go, do you know what? I'm not fully on board with this. I don't understand it. And if there's no one that can explain to me to make it make more sense, then that's not the path for me.
If you think about our online courses, the way we train, it's the experts basically going through in so much detail how to do each thing, isn't it? Because, like you said, you haven't got the dog in front of you. So you cover each and every possible angle. But there's also then that sort of support of knowing, even if after all that you don't get it, you're on a call, live coaching, where you'll go through it again or explain it again. But we are really always encouraging people to, as I say, work with the dog in front of them, because, like, for example, some spaniels, I know with mine, if you stroke them as a way of praise, you might as well have lit a bomb up under their backside, because their mind blows, because they're so wound up and so excited that you might as well like just sit down for half hour, have a cup of tea while they decide to calm down a little bit. To some people, stroking is like the best way you can praise your dog. To my dogs, the best way is just to say, well done. That's all I've got to give them. So again, even within breeds and in training, we keep on coming back to it. You've got to look at what's common sense.
You do, exactly, you know, and you saying about rewards there, it's the amount of times I've said to people, you've got to find a reward that your dog enjoys, you know, and it might be that that reward or the reward that your dog really enjoys and benefits from changes depending on the environment. Inside the house, in your garden, they might relish touch praise, but certainly a lot of working dogs, you put them out in that field environment and you're doing work with them that they are genetically predisposed to do, and you give them, you know, some touch praise and they go, get off me, I've got work to do. And if they're not enjoying it, it's not rewarding, and if it's not rewarding, it's not motivating. So again, it comes back to that common sense approach. If you're trying to give your dog a massive cuddle and it's either going, wow, I've gone sky high, I can't think, or it's gone, yeah, whatever, what's the next thing we're doing, then it's probably not working in that moment.
Do you think, Jem, also within this sort of common sense arena, until you've got your basics like nailed, you don't need all the flashy stuff? And a lot of the stuff I see with it advertising is, you know, get your dog to do something super, super flashy. And it's like, well, that's great, but I can't get my dog to come back in the park.
Yeah, and that's a really important point. And quite often we get really bored of the foundations and we get fed up that our dog's not recalling properly, and we get fed up that they're not healing beautifully. So we look at other things to succeed at instead. So things like trick training and game training and things like that are much more fun and generally easier for our dogs to achieve because they're done in sort of more, you know, sterile settings. So you might do it in the house or you might do it in the garden, things like that. But they don't target the root cause that you're struggling with. So your dog's still not recalling. It's really good at doing spins and downs and rollovers or whatever, but it's not so great at recalling. Yes, you might have a bit more engagement, but you're not tackling that root cause that is just not very good at recalling. It's just not very good at engaging when you're out. It's just not very good at walking on a lead. So whilst they're great things to, you know, bond with your dog and build that engagement, they're not tackling the issues you're having.
Do you think as well that when people sort of compare their dogs to others, that sort of disillusions them from following what they know is common sense as well? Because, like, let's take it this way. If you're going to teach a child to read, you're going to teach them the alphabet first. And that's what we're trying to say is like, do anything you want with your dog, but like, let's just get the fundamentals nailed so they become your foundation. Is there a case within the dog world, because of social media, because of like everything we see, where we're like, my dog has to be way flashier rather than nailing the fundamentals?
Absolutely. You know, and I fell into this trap with my very first dog, actually. I had a puppy at the same time as a friend of mine had a puppy. What I didn't take into account properly was that A, we're different people. We lived at opposite sides of the country. I'd moved away. Mine was a Springer and hers was a Lab. And so when we were chatting on the phone and she would say to me things like, oh, you know, my puppy will sit for every meal time and sit before we go out of the door. And I'm sat there thinking, oh, I've got a spaniel doing circuits around the house. How does this work? And it really got me down until I realized that they are two totally different dogs, you know, and even in terms of having your first dog and you've learned with it, and then 10 years later, you get your second dog. So much has changed in that 10 years, both in the way that we train things, the way that the dogs are bred, and the way that we have matured as people as well, you know. So not you cannot, what's the word you use, Joe, compare with other people because they are not in your shoes.
Let's talk about, if somebody's listening to us and going, all right, this is all well and good, but like, how do I work with my dog to get back to common sense almost? My dog's like doing flips, it's not listening. I'm doing 1,000 things, trying to remember them all because it's everything I've seen on social media, like just hoping something will stick. How can they sort of get back to setting real expectations? You know, where do we start? Like, you know, what is common sense behavior around dogs?
So I think if you've been trying something for a period of time, and that's a decent period of time, and you are getting no further forward, then surely that's the definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing and expecting different results from your dog. If there's no improvement, that thing you're doing is clearly not working. And I would be sitting down and thinking, right, why isn't that working? Talking to your trainer saying, what should be happening if I'm doing this? And if that's not happening, like I say, ask the question. Simple things like, we get told by people a lot that they are told to ignore their dogs if they're barking. And all that happens is that they sit there ignoring their dog's barking. The barking doesn't actually stop. And sometimes it actually gets worse because the barking's being ignored, so the dog tries even harder to get the owner's attention. So surely common sense would dictate that at some point you've got to communicate to that dog that the barking is not a wanted behavior, and show it a behavior that you'd like it to do, like sitting calmly on its bed, or, you know, just roaming around the house quietly. And I think that's what we're missing from a lot of dog training now, is just a common sense of teaching the dog what we want them to do. Ignoring a dog rarely does anything. In some rare cases, that might be something I suggest, but it's not often the way forward of teaching a dog a new thing. We had people that came, well, we have people that come to us a lot trying to build engagement with their dogs when they're out. And obviously, spaniels are already fixated on the ground, fixated on the smell, and they're quite hard to build engagement if you haven't done that from a young age. But they've been given advice like throwing food on the floor. Now, why would I want to build more value in the floor where the dog is already super engaged in? I want that value to be from me. So just switching little things like that reward is coming from the person, so that head comes up and they actually engage with the person, can make a huge difference. So
Exactly that. And I think also a lot of people they'll live with a behavior that they don't really enjoy, or they don't want to happen, because they either can't work out how to eradicate that behavior, or because they believe that it's just part of their dog's personality. And in parts it might be, you know, you might have a fizzy spaniel that isn't very good at putting its bottom on the floor, but does that mean you have to live with it throwing itself at you when you're trying to sit down with a cup of, you know, a hot cup of tea or a cup of coffee? And it absolutely does not. We know that they're energetic. We know that they like to do everything at a million miles an hour. But we can use that common sense approach and go, do you know what? I don't need to wear my coffee. I want to drink it. And therefore, I'm going to put steps in place. Like Jem said, you know, get that calm sit on the floor in a way that's not, you don't want to get the dog sitting on the floor because you've shoved a load of food under its nose or you've given it something to chew on. You want it to get sitting calmly on the floor because that's what you've taught it. That's the appropriate behavior for that time.
I can remember when I was in school, I don't know what just triggered this, but what you both just said has triggered this. And there was a little girl who used to pick her nose all the time, like just constant. It was just like never ending, right? And her mother never said anything to her. And the teachers, the teachers talking about the fact the mother never said anything, but also the teachers would be like, no, stop that. And like as soon as she went to do it, trying to like, if from what I know now from dog training, disrupting her behavior, trying to stop her to do it. But like, if nobody had told her, like nowhere had her mother actually said, your finger being rammed up your nose is not a good thing. So like this goes back to the barking. If you're sitting there barking all day and nobody has ever said to you, stop, well, you don't even know you're doing anything wrong. And for a dog, if you think about it, they're not mind readers. They need like clear and consistent communication. They need us to say, actually, I don't want you to do that, or I do want you to do that, and just like set that out for us, don't they? You know, and I think when we come to common sense, and it's never, in my eyes, it's never the owner's fault. And I know people might be like, well, yeah, of course it is. Well, it's not, because if you're new and you don't know, and you've gone and tried to find and seek out expert advice, and they've told you to ignore, then you're going to follow what you've been told, because why wouldn't you? That person obviously knows dogs better than you do, and the dog will stop. And it's only probably when you get to 2 years old and you're like, this dog hasn't stopped barking in 2 years, you might think, this isn't actually quite working here. Do you think that people are lacking confidence in themselves as owners because they're not the dog expert? They're almost scared to question or disagree with a trainer?
I think you're right. I think a lot of people are, and I went to see a lady not that long ago who her dog stole items from the kitchen surfaces. And the advice she'd previously been given was distract it away with more food. And we've often said things like that. Some dogs, very, very small minority, in my opinion, would learn from that approach. But the majority of dogs, certainly the majority that I've worked with, go, ha, ha, if I steal something, I'm not allowed, I get a paycheck. And so actually that initial advice could make lots of dogs worse. But because it's what they were told by a professional dog person, that's what they believe they need to do, and they will keep flogging it and trying and going until, like you said, Joe, 2 years down the line they go, actually I'm not convinced this is working. But I think it harks back to something else that you said. Dogs need that clear, consistent guidance. They need black and white. That you can't really have grey areas where dogs are concerned, and it's not draconian, it's not a nasty way of doing it, but it's very much you are allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. And in most respects, you will then see the dog go, okay, you got this. You're the one that, you lead me, you guide me, you tell me the rules, and the whole relationship can improve. So just by applying common sense and making sure that everything is crystal clear, you end up with a better relationship with your dog, a better partnership, and to be honest, a happy and fulfilling life as well.
I think we're, as a group, made up of like loads of women with active dogs who are using gun dog methods to train them. And when we say that, people say, well, does my dog need gun dog training? But there's loads and loads of basics in gun dog training, which we talk about, that it's not just a gun dog thing, is it? If you think about why we teach a gun dog to sit or to heel or to recall, they're the same reasons you teach, I don't know, the push on to sit or to heel or to recall. Gun dog training can be used by pretty much any woman or man with an active dog to train really lovely behavior where the dog has an absolutely great life.
You can, yeah, and I mean, if you look at it in simple terms, gun dog training is basically just high level obedience. So anyone can embark on gun dog training. You don't even have to have a working breed, but it does utilize those genetic traits that we touched upon earlier. It means that the dog is already slightly knowledgeable about what things it needs to do, and we can just nurture it to the benefit of everybody involved.
Yeah, because of some of the stuff that I've taken from gun dog training, like you could use like on the field, but you can literally just use as much on the beach. Like if you like going into a natural environment, I think some of the stuff we do with our dogs, like for example, teaching like hunting patterns. Okay, you may never plan on hunting anything in your life, but your dog hunting for a tennis ball is super fun for your dog. And you talk about connection and being engaged and all those things. And they are brilliant ways to teach that. Or bringing you back a tennis ball, that's recall. So when you start looking at all those things, pretty much everything we teach in gun dog training is valuable to an active dog that likes being out in the natural environment.
Absolutely. And it's using those natural instincts, and it's keeping the dog mentally stimulated and physically exercised and, in a much happier position. If we just had to sit in a room with four walls, a door, and maybe a window 24 hours a day, we as humans would be bored out of our brains. We all have hobbies. We go and do stuff that we want to do in order to keep ourselves mentally satiated. And we can do that with dogs, with gun dog training, with, bite work for that type of breed, with scent work for dogs that are used for scenting, and we can apply bits of each area of training, if you like, to most dogs, but it is beneficial to utilize what they are predisposed to do.
So we've talked about thinking about common sense around understanding your dog, the fact the dog's an individual, like while you're building up some trust with them, while you're getting them to engage with yourself. We've talked about like setting realistic expectations. It takes time for them to learn these things and not to compare your dog or your journey to somebody else's. And we've talked a little bit about like the basics being enough, like start with the foundations, then build upon it so that your dog can do everything that you want them to do, but get those sort of foundations instilled. We've talked a little bit as well about like positive reinforcement and the importance of that. And when we talk about our training for ourselves as a group, we certainly do not believe in any harsh punishments. We don't believe in any of that, but we do believe in sort of constructive correction, which I think is really, really important when we come under common sense. Telling your dog no to get off the counter, off me when I'm drinking a cup of tea or coffee, you know, just like the finger up the nose thing, it's common sense. We've talked about those things and like looking about what your dog finds rewarding when the dog is doing things right. To end this sort of thing, do you think one of the common sense points that are also missing with dog training, and I know what you're going to say on this, is around consistency and what consistency actually means?
Yeah, I think people often underestimate how consistent they need to be. So obviously we run group classes and weekly classes and things like that. And you can tell the people that come to the class, do the training at the class and then go home and do absolutely nothing with their dogs other than maybe take them out. And that consistency needs to be built into your everyday. Otherwise, you are not going to see the results. Well, you might see the results, but not anywhere near as quickly as you could do with your dog. And actually, it's unfair not being consistent with your dogs because they never fully know where they stand with anything. Some days you will tell them to do one thing, and other days you'll ignore it. So, yeah, consistency is a must. Sam?
Absolutely. And I think it's, you know, humans will often give mixed signals to dogs, but then the dog is left in limbo going, well, you know, yesterday I was allowed to run 80 yards away where I saw the hare, and today I'm not allowed to run 80 yards away. So you've kind of, the dog is there in limbo going, I don't know what the rules are. And if they don't know what the rules are due to our lack of consistency, then they're going to either keep trying different things to try and find out what is right, or they're going to go, well, you don't know what you're talking about, so I'm just going to go and busy myself over here. And that then obviously can lead them into self-rewarding and other issues from that. So I think, you know, being consistent is as important, if not more, well, actually more so than making sure that you've got those foundations thoroughly cemented in place. If you haven't got those foundations, it's difficult to then progress up the pyramid and to move on. And all the foundations in dog training, they're there for a reason. They're there to help you on the next steps with progression. And so if the foundation and the consistency isn't there in the beginning, something is going to crumble further down the line.
And when we talk about consistency, it's like in the home, there's consistency about expectation of behavior. Like we said, you don't jump on the chairs, you don't jump on the tables unless you're asked to jump on the chairs and tables, in which case, very, very different situation. But it's like the little things in the house. It's not set training. It's obedience and behavior. When you're asked to do something, please do that nicely for me. And if we're doing something, can you just chill out a minute, etc., etc. And then you've got a different part of consistency around gun dog training, which is we're going to go out and we're going to do recall and we're going to do, you know, jumping over ditches and we're going to do water work. And then that needs consistency. But the day-to-day consistency needs to be solid 100%. Going out training, that doesn't have to be an hour every day on top of what you're doing in the house, does it?
It doesn't. I mean, it's every interaction with your dog is a training opportunity. And it might be 30 seconds. You want them to sit still on their bed, nice and quietly, whilst you open the door for the postman. You know, it might be that you want to practice some heel work around a kitchen counter whilst dinner's in the oven. So it's rather than thinking, I absolutely must take my dog out and really nail in this training day in, day out, and all these exercises and all these fancy behaviors. It's making sure that your overall approach to your dog is with an end goal in mind, and therefore bringing that consistency in with every interaction you have. Jem?
Yeah, I think exactly that, Sam. And I mean, we keep saying it, but use your common sense. What is your dog going to learn from this interaction? Is it going to be something that I like? And if it's not, maybe think about a way to manage the situation if you can't, in that situation, do some training. Yeah, and just go from there.
Fabulous. Thank you both for an incredible session. We hope our listeners have enjoyed. We hope you're all getting used to the fortnightly format. Very, very different from what it's been before, but we are finding it fabulous for allowing us to spend more time in the society with our members. So if you're enjoying this and you want some help getting back into your common sense approach to dog training, please check us out at www.thelwdg.com, where you can look at becoming a member or take our Bulletproof Your Gun Dog Training 90-minute free training class, which will help you solidify the foundations in your mind going forward. Please like, please subscribe, and if you have any questions you'd love us to cover, please send it to office@ladiesworkingdoggroup.com, and we will look at it, and if we think it's a fabulous topic, we will make sure we cover it very soon. We hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you all in a fortnight's time. That's it for today's episode. A massive thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to head over to the LWDG and sign up for our membership. Get access to expert-led training, a wonderfully supportive community, and the resources you need to become a confident and skilled gun dog trainer. Let's take this journey together, because no woman should have to train her gun dog alone. We'll see you all next week.